Joe Cutler, my good friend, ichthyologist, National Geographic explorer, doing incredible work in Gabon. He recently did the Uguy River mega transect. So over 1,000 kilometers, maybe it's miles, Joe will correct me, down the river, sampling biodiversity. This hadn't been done in over 100 years. You can find it Africa's Last Wild River. I'll post a link to the Instagram up shortly. And so Joe, back in Gabon, which is a place he loves to be, and he is now the director of research at Lope National Park and manager of the Station des Etudes des Gorillas et Chimpanzees. So, gonna bring Joe in now, live at the Uguy River. Let's see him, Joe.
Hi, Joe. Hello, everybody. This is the Uguy River here in Lope National Park in Gabon. And as Joe said, I'm an ichthyologist, an aquatic ecologist, and I love exploring rivers like this, in particular, the fish biodiversity. In 2020, we paddled down this river from way upstream about 600 kilometers to way downstream about 400 kilometers, eventually reaching the Atlantic Ocean, and paddling the route of Pierre Sauvignon de Braza about 150 years ago. So that was my past work. And now, as Joe mentioned, I'm the director of research for Lope National Park, and I'm the manager of the Station des Etudes des Gorilles et Chimpanzees, which is about 12 kilometers or 8 miles south of where I'm standing right now. And if you're wondering where I'm standing, we're just a little bit south of the equator. If you looked at our latitude, it would be south 0.10, and our longitude is about 11.58 degrees east. So we're just a little bit east of where the prime meridian is and just a tiny bit south of the equator. And as you can see, the Uguy is a large river. In fact, it is the 4th biggest river in Africa in terms of flow. And right now it is big and swollen. We're approaching the end of the rainy season and the water is quite high. In the dry season, we'd be seeing exposed rocks all across the river here, and the sand that we're standing on would continue for another 10 or 15 meters beyond where I'm standing right now. It also means that fishing at this time of year is really difficult because a lot of the areas where you want to fish are actually underwater and inaccessible in the big water. To give you an idea of how wet the rainy season is, we had a bit of a storm last night and had 29 centimeters of rain, about 11 and a half inches or about a foot of rain in one night last night. So the river itself is actually rising right now as all the tributaries dump their water into the Uguy. It's a pretty exciting thing. And my role right now at the Station des Etudes des Gorilles et Chimpanzees is to do baseline analyses of fish biodiversity. Now, Lope National Park has been protected for over 40 years. It's the oldest and largest national park in Gabon. But until we got here, there had been no one who really focused on freshwater fish biodiversity in Lope National Park. So there is a lot to discover. I've spent the last few days traveling to this river or that stream or this swamp and throwing my cast net or placing my traps or taking my little dip nets and scraping the banks trying to catch every fish I can. And just before joining this call, I did about an hour of fishing here with my cast net, but I thought it'd be a good thing to throw the cast net a couple times during the call to see if we could catch a few fish and show off what it is to study freshwater fish biodiversity here in the Uguy River in Gabon, and one of my favorite techniques, which is cast netting, or in French, l'épervier, which means hawk. So I've got my cast net right over here, and I've got a bucket to put fish in, and I've got an ice chest with some fish I've already collected. So just in case I don't catch anything, I can still show you some biodiversity. Now, the thing about cast netting is you need to be really well organized. You need to make sure that there's no knots in the line, that there's no kinks in the net. And this net is quite long. As you can see, it's much taller than I am. And so I've got to really make sure that everything's nice and organized and clean before I go to throw it. Now, all these are little weights. And so I've got to make sure that when I throw this, the weights spread out in a nice uniform pattern so that it'll fall a bit like a pancake onto the water surface. So I take a first handful, throw it over my shoulder, and then I start working my way down to grab another handful. All right, here we are. Everything's clean, everything's clear. I'm gonna throw right out here, kind of on the edge of this eddy. Perfect. It's not every time when you throw it that it turns out like that. Hopefully we'll catch some fish. All that and a good cast and not a single fish. Maybe we can try again a little bit further downstream. There's a few rocks right here, and there are a lot of fish that like to hang out right around the rocks. So now I've got to re-clean this, make sure it's nice and clean and that there are no kinks. All right, here we go. And I'm going to prepare myself before I go downstream, because when the fish see me, they're going to try to swim away to escape. So here we go, getting nice and organized here. All right. And you can see in the backdrop there, Mount Braza, or Sovi Sovi. It is one of the most famous features in Lope National Park. So my goal is to throw it right on that little submerged rock that you see there at the far end of this little rocky band. Oh, it looks like I've got a few. All right. Now the nice thing about these cast nets is it's pretty easy to get the fish out of them. They're not stuck or tangled. All right. Now each one of these, they're actually the same species. These are all Labioanectens. And I'm going to take these, I'm going to put them in the ice chest. But before I do, let me show you how beautiful this fish is. You can see the tones of green and purple on the scales. And in the common name for this species, Labioanectens, is the Negalu, which means gall nose. And you can see right here on the nose, it's got all these little tubercles, which during the breeding season, they become really pronounced in the males, and it's used to attract females. Now this fish is a sucker. It's got an interesting sucker disc mouth, and that's why you find them a lot on the rocks. So this is a species that's adapted to fast-moving water with a rocky bottom. There are other catfish that are similar that have the sucker disc mouth that we have here in Gabon. Now, I have a few other fish that I caught over the last hour here in my ice chest. And I wanted to just show you a little bit of the biodiversity that we have here in the Uguy River in Gabon. Now, the Uguy has about 350 described species of freshwater fish. You won't catch all of them with a cast net, but you can catch a lot of the biodiversity. So, right here, I've got a beautiful Brachiopotusius macrops. And you can see, you can see that nice green color on its back and the nice orange fins with the white tips. Really a nice looking fish. Actually a cousin of the South American piranha. What else have we got here? This is a freshwater herring, a Polonula vorax. And if you can see, if I can keep it still enough, you'll see that the nose is almost transparent. Now this is a filter feeding fish. And they live in the open water here on the sandy banks of the Uguay. Now I have not seen any of these Polonula vorax in the smaller streams within Lope National Park. Thus far, I've only caught them in the main stem Uguay. I've got a few more species in here that I'd like to show you. This is one of my favorite fishes. This is a Hemichromis elongatus, also known as a jewel cichlid. Now, during the breeding season, these fish turn intense red, and the black bars that you see on the flanks of the fish become even more pronounced. Now, this little cichlid is actually a very intense predator. If you look at its teeth under a microscope, they look just like the teeth of a carnivore. They're sharp, spiny-looking teeth, much like you'd see in a leopard or a cat, or even a dog. And it's a very aggressive predator in the shallow, stagnant water ecosystems. All right, this is it's small, but it's maybe the most beautiful of the fish that I've got here today. This is a Brachiopotusius Lamberty, and you can see that nice kind of green color on its back and the little black spot here on the caudal fin. And then you can see how long and filamentous this dorsal fin is. Really a nice miniature fish. And this is an adult. This is as big as they get. And a lot of the fish diversity here in Gabon is quite small. Now, that's not all the fish diversity. There are huge freshwater stingrays. There are large migratory snappers that come all the way from the coast, get to Lope, and keep going upstream. And then there are huge catfishes and very large labiobarbus, which are called yellowfish. At least that's their common name. I've got another labioanactens here, the same one that we caught with the cast net. And this one, you can actually, woo! Woo! It was a jumper. I want to show you this fish's nose in particular. You can see how well developed the tubercles are on this one's nose. And that indicates that it's actually a male getting ready for the breeding season, which is really interesting. All right, just a few more fish to show, and then I will open it up to questions. All right, this is one of my favorites. This is a Distichotis hypostomatus. And if you can see, its scales are much smaller than any of the other fish I've shown. It's also got one of the weirdest mouths of any fish. I don't know if we can zoom in on the mouth a little bit, but the mouth is totally downturned. And this fish is actually a detritivore. So it swims around eating dead and decomposing matter all around on the bottom of the rivers and lakes. Now, these fish can get quite large, at least, like this big. So this is a juvenile, but they're really fascinating fish. Now, this next one, I've got to be a little bit careful because it's very spiny and even venomous. This little catfish that you see here is a Crezekties Oguensis. Now, there are lots of Crezekties species, but this one actually is named after this river. It was first discovered in the Uguay, and it's really distinct. When you look at the head of this fish, it's got a really wide, flat mouth, whereas most of the Crezekties have a tiny, almost pointed snout. So when you look at a Crezekties from the top down, you can easily distinguish whether it's a Crezekties Oguensis. Now, you can't hear it, but I can actually hear this fish croaking, and it's actually just grinding its bones together to create a little sound. It's pretty neat. And last but not least, I've got one more fish in here. Now, this is one of the most common fish on the Uguay. This is a Cuptodon theloni. Now, it's not the biggest individual ever, but this is an adult. And one of the things that I found very interesting when we were doing our exploration of the Uguy River, when we started 1,000 kilometers away from the coast, we caught this Cuptodon theloni. When we arrived at the ocean, we caught this Cuptodon theloni. They are literally at almost every single site that we fish, we catch these fish. Now, you're not going to find them out in the main channel. They're not great swimmers. You find them really close to the banks where the water is a bit still. One of the things that's really cool about exploring fish biodiversity is you learn where different fish species are going to be within a river system like this. Not every fish is going to be out in the current. Not every fish is going to be on the banks. And it also changes daytime to nighttime. If we continued our sampling for about 2 more hours until the sunset here, we would be catching totally different fish. All sorts of little catfish would come out from their hiding places, and we'd be catching different diversity. So it's really important when you're studying fish to use multiple sampling techniques and to sample both during the day and at night so that you can see all the different diversity that's present in an ecosystem like this. So that's a bit of a tour of some of the diversity here in Gabon's rivers and in the Uguay in particular. We still have a lot to discover. So throughout my previous work, we've calculated that about 10 to 15% of the fish species that we collect are completely new to science, have never been named, have never been discovered. So anybody who's interested in studying new species, maybe naming a new species, come to Gabon and come and study freshwater fish with me. It's a lot of fun. With that, I'd like to take any questions if there are any, and then I'll get these fish back into the water where they'll be happier.
All right, Joe, thank you so much. That was amazing. Your cast netting technique has improved so much. I remember we did events with classrooms all the way down the Uguy River, and initially you were kind of showing it off and good casts, but wow, those ones were epic. I can see the practice.
Yeah, I mean, once you've thrown a cast net probably 10,000 times, you'd expect that I'd get a little better with time.
So, Joe, the first question that came in is, what led you to Central African freshwater ecosystems?
You know, a bit of luck, a bit of interest, a bit of chance. So I've always been kind of a fish freak. I love fish. I studied fish when I was an undergrad. I have fished my entire life. But I didn't expect that I'd be working in Central Africa until when I finished my undergraduate work. I joined the U.S. Peace Corps, and I was stationed in Cameroon. Now, while I was an agroforestry volunteer and I was working a lot with the national park and with local farmers, I found that there were volcanic crater lakes all around the landscape, and I got to be the person to go and fish in those lakes. When you're one of the first scientists to go and fish an ecosystem, it really is exciting, and it's truly just discovery. Every time you pull a net through a new river or a new lake, you don't know what you're going to catch. And I fell in love with it, and luckily, I've had the chance to keep doing this. For the last 9 years, I've been studying freshwater fish biodiversity in Central Africa. So hopefully I'll be able to do it and make it a life.
Yeah, and you mentioned that the river wasn't well sampled. There wasn't a lot of we'll say ichthyology work going on, fish scientists. And I think that's something you're working to change as well. A new generation of Gabonese ichthyologists.
Yeah, one of the things I'm really excited about is working with local scientists and also working with local students who want to become scientists. There are so many cool things to explore that even if I fished every day for the rest of my life, I would never explore every river system here in Gabon. So the only way to really study it is to train people, empower other people, and have them work in collaboration to go and survey these systems. So, for example, Lope National Park has never had a thorough fish biodiversity survey. That's one of the things I'm doing right now. But there are 13 national parks in Gabon, and none of the other ones have had a thorough inventory of fish. So maybe I will start with Lope, and then maybe it'll be another explorer and another ichthyologist working in Mukalabadudu and Luongo and the Ivindo and the Bateke Plateau. There are so many cool areas to explore.
Absolutely. Amazing, Joe. I hate to pry away from this. This is such a beautiful view. I'm going to make it full screen again here. The river is beautiful, nice and swollen. The fish are amazing. We've got the lovely Megan behind the camera, who's just been rocking the views. Thank you so much. Joe, I'm getting out there. I've got to get out there and spend some time with you and Megan as well. Thank you so much for being so dedicated and passionate about your work. I have no doubt it's rubbing on to anybody who you meet, all the students you're able to meet. Just incredible stuff, Joe.
Thank you, Joe. It's great to be able to share with the Global Biodiversity Festival and the Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants audience. Thank you for including me. And please come out and visit anytime, Joe. We'll do lots of hangouts from the field.
All right. Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Megan. Have a great rest of the day. Happy World Biodiversity Day tomorrow.
Thank you. You too.